I'm on my way.
The Freedom Rides of 1961 were a simple but daring plan to deliberately violate the segregation laws of the Deep South.
I won't turn back.
There's a possibility that we might be arrested. This is the only trouble that I anticipate.
Welcome to the town of Colmar Manor. I'm Sadar Barrow, Mayor of Colmar Manor, and I am so thrilled to have you all here today. I want to first, before we do anything, I want to first say thank you so much to the organizers of this event. They have done such a wonderful job in putting all this information together that's extremely valuable to us in our future, and learning our past means so much to where we go forward. So I want to give a thanks to the Recreation Council and all the people who worked on this, and a special thank you to our councilwoman, Risa Epps, for her leadership. And we're going to first start out with an invocation in order to bless this event, and that will be with Reverend Addison.
I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praises shall continually be in my mouth. Would you please bow your heads, close your eyes in reverence to the Lord. Heavenly Father, we thank you for lending Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to us, who was your ambassador of prayer, peace, justice, and nonviolence. Lord, thank you for giving us this great dreamer who fulfilled his mission by living his faith by his works. Therefore, we must fulfill Dr. King's dream by allowing justice to flow down like a mighty stream throughout our towns, county, country, and even the world. However, we must be careful not to pollute the stream with bitterness, hatred, and violence. We must fulfill the dream by believing that justice is not bankrupt. We must fulfill the dream by raising a generation, especially of children, who will be measured by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. We must fulfill Dr. King's dream by wearing the mantle of God's servant leaders to carry out the work of civil and social justice. And we must fulfill the dream by fighting for the deliverance of the oppressed while watching for the healing of both the oppressed and the oppressors. Finally, Lord, we ask that you mightily bless today's program, its organizers, Councilmember Epps, and all those who were so diligent to serve with her, every participant, and especially our children. Lord, magnify yourself in our homes, on our jobs, schools, churches, synagogues, and other places where your name is lifted up. In Jesus' precious name, we give him all the glory, the honor, and the praise. We pray, and that all the people say, amen.
Amen. Okay, now we will have the Star Spangled Banner by Patrick Breeze. Please feel free to sing along.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the rampant we watched was so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glade, the bombs bursting in air, laid through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does the Star-Spangled Banner
people in the house. I don't want to say important because you're all important, but those people that really help us get to the next level in things and help get our laws straight and so forth. So I want to first introduce, we have Councilmember Harrison here. We got Senator Ramirez. We got Delegate Fennell. We got Delegate Tallow. We have our former delegate and Prince George's County Chair, Jolene Ivey. And we have some of our local people here. We have Councilmember Trina Brown from Bladensburg, Commissioner Patricia Crows from Cottage City. And then let me have all my council members all stand and be recognized. Councilmember Epps, we have Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Blue, and Councilmember Bowe. Okay, so as we talk about this Black history, and as we, in the month of February every year, take a time to step up and take a look back and remember what we've been through. Because as you all know, like many people in this country who came as immigrants, most of us and our forefathers were not brought here voluntarily. And therefore, it's a time to remember what we have had to experience to go through in order to get where we are today. We are in a wonderful place. We are in an opportunity where we can grow and develop. We have to recognize that the challenges that our forefathers went through to get us to this place is something we have to honor on a regular basis. In honoring that, we also have to recognize that there's still far to go. In your brochure, you will find what is a story about the first Black family from 1968 that came to Colmar Manor. And these family members are here today, the Scales family. Can you rise, please? I want you to read over that and just look and see all of the things that had to take place. I can tell you this, my family was one of the first Black families to move into Brentwood, Maryland. And in doing so, it was actually my first time in experiencing discrimination. We came from Washington, D.C., and I'll tell you that I was, in fact, raised in the Nation of Islam. And in being raised in the Nation of Islam, we were taught very strongly to be independent and to be dignified at all times, and to not let anyone tell us that we were any less than we are. And while I don't agree with a lot of some of the radical racial type of things that the Nation of Islam may continue to speak about, I do have to say that that was a strong background for me growing up in teaching me, as you should all know, your worth. And that's what's important. And as we have our first Black family of Colmar Manor here, I want you all, when you get a chance, to go over and meet and greet them and have your own conversation about that experience. Because now, while we were of the first coming to Prince George's County as Blacks, Prince George's County is now a predominantly Black county and the richest Black county in the country. So it says something to all those first, and that means something for those who were first to step forward. So I want to speak of also the first in Colmar Manor. Our first Black mayor was elected in 1982. He was mayor from 82 through 85, and then from 87 through 88. So I want to actually continue on with the remarks. The county executive is on his way, so I think that we want to offer you to get up and go eat, but the county executive is going to be here and he has to leave. So I think that what I would prefer to actually do is to see if Senator Ramirez might come on up and have words for us.
Good afternoon. How's everyone?
Good afternoon.
It's such a pleasure to be back here at Colmar Manor. It's a great facility. And I want to thank the town of Colmar Manor for hosting this. I was speaking to someone, I think Aretha earlier, and I said, if I didn't know that you had these other activities, I would have brought my daughter, because I was on the way here. You know, my wife said, do you want to take a tour? And I said, well, you know, I know that after I get 20 minutes, a 3-year-old will get tired of listening, but I will make sure that I'll bring, my daughter and hopefully my son as he gets a little bit older, so they can start learning. And it's really, truly what you said. I think a lot of us, and I include myself, sometimes we forget certain things or we overlook or we take certain things for granted. But I think having like this and having interactive events and activities for children are very important, because as the years go by, and as, for example, Prince George's County becomes, one of the most wealthy counties in the United States, and one of the wealthiest African American county, I think you just take certain things for granted, but the reality is certain things we still have to work at them. And from my part, I know that we talk about passing laws that are just, that are fair, that address the issues. And one of the issues is, still dealing with some of the police issues that we have, the trust between the community and the police department. I think one of the things we're looking at this year is body cameras. And people say, well, it's not so fancy, but there's evidence and there's stats to show that it helps. It helps for the police, and it helps for the citizens, and I think it helps keep both sides in line. Because if you know you're being recorded and the police officer knows that he's being recorded, I think it helps to address some of the issues, and it will help bring back that confidence between the community and law enforcement. And I've talked to many law enforcement officials, and it is a tough job, but at the same time, it's a job that you're our hope, and you're there to protect us. And I think sometimes, in certain instances, as we see, especially now with technology, that you see it go on the internet, you see certain things occurring. And I think that's one of the things that I think we also need to start looking at. So, being that today's February 1st, it's the first day of Black History Month. I grew up in Prince George's County, and I think I was growing up, probably, if I tell you some dates, you'll know that about how old I am. I'm still young, I'm still 21. But I remember growing up here in the 1980s and going through school, and you started to see the change, and different demographics, the change in the different people who are leaving, and sometimes the different folks who are coming in, and you still see that now. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about Prince George's County and District 47 that I like. And I truly, honestly think it's one of those things that you can have different communities and you can learn from each other. I was at a basketball tournament earlier for adults, and you saw everyone interacting, and you think back 30, 40 years ago, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that in Prince George's County. It wasn't like that in many places. And we do take some of those things for granted, where we say, oh, this is normal for certain things to happen or certain ramifications to occur. But things don't happen overnight. I'm sure that I'm preaching to the choir here, but for a younger generation, which I see some of the younger generation around, I think that it's truly remarkable to have people continue to tell you, our history, not just the United States, but also here in Prince George's County. For my part, and I'll end with this because I know we have the county executive coming, and he's going to tell us a great story. But Freedom Riders, you think about it, people who got on the bus and risked their lives, the nonviolent movement, and no one was paying for them to do this. But they decided to take it upon themselves and say, we're going to segregate the South, and we're going to enforce the laws that say you can't have separate, can't have segregations in buses. That's what they were going down there. And they were being beaten, they were being, assaulted, they were being, you name it, they suffered it. And I got the chance to actually meet one of the original Freedom Riders, Mr. Travis Britt. Believe it or not, if you go to his name, he's actually mentioned something. And very humble man, very strong conviction. And honestly, when I decided to run for state senator, when I first ran, he said to me, he came to me, and we were in the bathroom, and it was kind of a little bit awkwardly said, hey, I do want to meet you because I've always run into you. And he says, so that's the first time I got to meet him. And then when I got to run for state senate, you know, I said, hey, I would really like your support. We sat down and talked about it several different times. And he looked, and one of the things that I appreciate about him, that he judged me on who I was, on my character, and it's something that because I guess he was trying to tell me, I know how it is to be on the outside looking in, and he said, it's not a good feeling. And he said, I'm gonna give you a chance, I'm gonna support you, because I was running against a gentleman who was African American. And he said, look, I'm not gonna look at color, I'm not gonna look at certain things, but I'm gonna look at you, what do you have to say, what are you gonna do? And you know what, that's a big, that says a lot about who he was as a freedom rider, what his convictions were as a person. He was married to a great lady, Gwendolyn Britt, who was his wife, who was also involved in the movement. And in talking a lot, and I hope, and I'll end this conversation by saying, my hopes is if I can somehow pass that down to my kids, because in 20, 30 years from now, things change. But our feelings towards one another should never change. We should treat each person the way we want to be treated, the way we want our children to be treated. And that's with love, respect. And sometimes we disagree, sometimes we agree. But there's a way about disagreeing that we should all learn from people who are in the movement. And that's one of the things that I think
I actually had prepared remarks, but before I actually go into that, Mayor Barrow talked about current day enslavement, people barely being able to survive. They're working, perhaps, but they can barely survive because they're barely making enough money to keep a roof over their head. And that was why a few years ago I pushed so hard to raise the minimum wage here in Prince George's County. And quite honestly, it's still not enough, because if we had kept pace with the economy, if the minimum wage had kept pace with the economy, today the minimum wage would be at least $10, if not 12. And we're just making 9, I think. So it's very difficult. And she talked about these corporations who are making all of this money. And one of my comments when they were fighting me was that many of them are driving by their employees standing at the bus stop with their children in strollers in the cold mornings, 5 or 6 o'clock when it's still dark. And they have in their Lexus, their whatever very, very expensive car splashing water on them, as they go by. And that's real. Because if you've ever been out driving, you will see parents standing at bus stops with their children in strollers early in the morning when it's cold and they're barely making ends meet. So I just needed to say that. But what a wonderful opportunity to celebrate the history of African Americans and the contributions that we've made. It's always a privilege for me, but I'm especially excited to be here today to be celebrating with you. And all of you here in District 5 in the town of Colmar Manor, and our friends from other neighboring jurisdictions, and I feel right at home because I am at home. So on this first day of Black History Month, I want to thank you for joining all of us here, and I'm honored, I'm truly, truly honored to represent you on the County Council. But there is no doubt that African Americans share a rich and diverse history, replete with great achievements and contributions to American life. But so often during Black History Month, we focus on, the regular history makers, Dr. King, Rosa Parks, Colin Powell, Barack Obama. but yet we know that all of their contributions are great. But today, I was told that I was to talk about the Freedom Riders. And so I'm reminded of the countless men and women and children whose names and faces we don't know, those who paved the way. Some riding interstate buses into segregated South challenged local laws and customs that forced segregated seating. Men like Travis Britt, as the senator talked about, who was then a 27-year-old cafeteria worker arrested for participation in the Freedom Rides. He rode the Illinois Central Railroad to Jackson, Mississippi, where he was arrested and jailed with 9 others. He actually once said, just weeks before I met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for the first time, I said goodbye to New York City and thumbed my way to All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C., where they were recruiting for the Freedom Rides. The buses headed to the South to test racial segregation policies. The first wave of Freedom Rides made national news when a bus in Alabama was firebombed by a mob, and the doors were held closed as it burned, and later viciously beat the riders when they were able to escape. The next wave of riders, they told us, had to send a message that bombing would not deter protests. So I hopped on board. Women like the late Gwendolyn Britt, a Freedom Rider who became a Maryland State Senator representing this very community. She was a strong and passionate legislator who served with dignity and passion, motivated by the ideals that she learned on the front lines as a Freedom Rider, a conviction in what was right and fair. And I will say that both Gwendolyn and Travis Britt were my classmates at Bowie State University. And they were actually quite quiet and humble about their experience, although Travis talked a little bit more than Gwen. But I had no idea that all went on, that they participated in that, because they were very humble in spirit. But they were strong activists, and they wanted to do what was right. And so they were both Freedom Riders, and they were residents of this community until the time of their death, in which we just lost Travis Britt over the Christmas holiday. Each was a strong advocate for civil rights throughout their lifetime and applied that same activist approach in their strong, formidable advocacy for the residents of Prince George's County. And because of them, we are. Just last week, we lost former Prince George's County Council member Marvin Wilson. He was a history maker because, like Freedom Riders, he wanted to be counted as one who made a difference. For almost 20 years, he served as a council member in what was then the town of Glenarden. Then years as the mayor of Glenarden, filling the seat that my father vacated upon his election to the Prince George's County Council. And when my father passed away, he was appointed by the council to fill his unexpired term and re-elected twice by the residents of Prince George's County. And like many others, you know, when he came to Prince George's County, because he was a native of Washington, D.C., even though he had a few dimes to rub together in his pocket, he couldn't just choose where he wanted to go. He said that he had already fought in the Korean War. He didn't want his children to have to fight because of, just because he could afford to buy a place. He wanted them to be happy. He wanted his family to be happy, and so he selected Glenarden. Throughout his lifetime of public service, he was a man, Marvin Wilson, of the people, for the of the people and for the people. He devoted his time serving the needs of others, whether as a community activist serving as chairman of Citizens for Better Government or as a member of the Prince George's County Council. He was a reliable warrior for those who he represented, and he never forgot he was a part of the community he served. That is Black history. In my years of public service as a community activist and as a member of the Prince George's County Council, I have been privileged to serve with many notable African American and minority history makers. And some are here with me today. County Executive for Sherman Baker, Senator Ramirez, former Delegate Governor and I thought I saw on the program David Harrington. I guess he will be here. But there are history makers all over this audience. You don't have to hold political office to be a history maker. You only need to find an opportunity to make a difference in some small way. That is how we change things for the better. Not only for our country, but for our communities, each and every day. So it was Mary Wright Evelyn who said, we must not, in trying to think about how we can make a big difference, ignore the small daily differences we can make, which over time add up to big differences that we often cannot foresee. So that's why in Andrea Harrison's terms, that it is very important that you always have a smile and a kind word for somebody, because you never know what a person is going through. And that one smile, that one kind word can make all the difference in the world. Amen. And that's not Black history, that's our history. And that's what's most important.
Last couple of months of Wayne's life. You know, Wayne was never a reflective person, you know, especially when he was young, right, Andrea? But in the last couple of months of his life, he started talking about integration of the schools in Prince George's County. And he started talking about his dad and others in the community that were names foreign to me. Even though my kids grew up in Chevrolet, like Jolene's kids, and but these were names that I did not know, who shaped this community outside of the District of Columbia. And he talked a lot about how they gave him the opportunity, almost, you know, pushing him to do better. And so it was interesting for me to hear the stories. And if you ever spent 2 seconds with him during those last couple of months, he would tell you about how they integrated, you know, the schools in Bladensburg, and going first to Judy Hoyer in Chevrolet, which seems like a long way when you were a little kid, but it's just right across the railroad tracks where they live. From where we live now, he used to remind me, he said, Baker, I couldn't buy it in the neighborhood you're buying it. I said, it's all Chevrolet. He said, not back then. But the thing that stuck with me during those, and I think is appropriate on Black History Month, is he talked about how he and his older brother were at the elementary school and they were getting picked on. And so they asked for police protection. Remember Diana, you told him? And he said they gave them one of the police to protect them. And you think, okay, good thing, out there protecting these kids. It's an elementary school. The police car would get behind them and bump them on the back. All the way home. Police car. Police car. So when you hear stories like that, and he would tell it in a Wayne Curry type of way, which would make you laugh, but to me it made me want to cry.
Yes.
It also made me want to bring my 3 young adults and sit them before him and let him tell them the story. Because it reminds me of why I got into politics, and I say this a lot in the first place. Much like my very good 3 young adults who sometimes occupy my house, even if I don't want them to. I was oblivious to the world that was going on around me. I grew up in the military. I lived on military bases for the majority of my life. So whatever was happening in the real world, as a child, I did not know. We went overseas where I went to school and got in trouble and got kicked out of school and did a whole bunch of stuff. But the world that was going around, the struggles that were going around this country, we didn't know it. My dad sheltered us from it. It wasn't until we came back to the United States of America and he decided he was going to move to Massachusetts where his mom was. And the only way he could get an assignment was to teach ROTC. And he got an assignment, grade 1 at MIT. And he came here first. We stayed over there. He came back to the States first. And then we left a very warm, nice, multicultural place. Came to the United States of America. Went to a very cold Boston, which we thought. But we didn't live in Boston. We lived in Beverly, Massachusetts, with literally no black people. And so, of course, we looked around, my brothers and I said, well, why the heck are we in this place with no black folks? What we didn't realize was busing was going on in Boston at the time. What my dad did not want us to go through was there were actual fights and killings with people over schools, over us in 1975, 76. It was still going on. But it was in that school with no black people that the teacher forced me to read, or I chose, Black Boy. And much like the stories that Wayne was telling us during the last couple of months of his life, Black Boy opened a window to me that I had never seen before. It was the first time I realized not every child lived like I lived. Not every child had the opportunities I had. It was the first time I realized it. It was living off post, reading that book, and meeting my cousins who lived in a very different world than I ever lived in. And it made me feel ashamed and guilty. And it made me want to do something about it. And that led me to wanting to come to Howard University, which I did not know, also sheltered life, was a historically black college. I knew they had beautiful young ladies there. Didn't know it was a historically black college because nobody in my family went to college, so we had no reference. But it was in D.C., and I wanted to be in D.C. because that's where politics are made. That's where you become, a politician in those words. But what I learned, and I will close it up soon, is I got to Howard University wanting to major in political science. And, you want to be a politician, you want to go in there, you go political science. That's natural, right? Then I went to this lecture at Howard University because at that time, if David Harrington was here, he would tell you that, you're a starving student, so like the buffet back there, if you go to the lectures, they have like food. So somebody was like, man, they're doing carrot cake. I was like, carrot cake? I'm going. Because I want some carrot cake. And I went there, it was a history department. And it was Black History Month. And the speaker was Rayford Logan, one of the premier historians in the world. Rayford Logan, who I'd only seen in books, didn't know I'd ever get a chance to meet. He was still alive then. They had Rayford Logan and Chancellor Williams, who wrote The Destruction of the Black Civilization. And I got a chance to touch these icons, to see them in person. And I could never go back to political science. They opened my eyes to a world that changed me forever. They introduced me to Carter G. Woodson, which Malcolm, the thing that we like most about Carter G. Woodson is Omega, who started History Week, which ended up being History Month for us. But I love the fact that it was there at Howard that I got to see these folks and understand. It also did make me major in African American history, because listening to Chancellor Williams and Rayford Logan, I understood for the first time clearly that the history of this country is the history of African Americans. At no point, that's right. We are the most American there is. We shape every part of this great country. If you truly learn history, American history, you learn African American history. You can't divorce the two. And I learned that. I want to end with this. I took, because I'm always trying to educate myself and my young adults. And we decided when the movie Selma came out that my daughters and my wife and I were all going to go to a movie together. This was going to be a family event. And expecting very much like, you go there, it's a family event, you just bonding time. And those of you who know my wife know that she's not very verbal. She doesn't speak much anymore. And we're sitting in a movie, and the girls and I are sitting together, and my wife is over here, and we place her so she can see the screen. And there's a point in the movie, because this is history, I'm not giving the movie away, where they're coming across the bridge. And the police officers attack. At that very moment, my wife looks and says, "Oh my God." And it nearly, we forgot the movie for a moment. I tried to take out my camera and record it. But the reason I bring that up is there are things in this country's history that we should never forget. That are so moving, so touching, that they never leave the back parts of your mind. And for her, those were moving moments that she said, "Oh my God." It is important for us, so if anybody here that tells you why, why do we celebrate Black history? Why do we talk about these people who changed our lives? You take them to places to see Selma, you read some of the books, you talk to some leaders. Victor and I were at an event for Latino Leadership Network, and I was getting an award. And I was sitting next to one of my heroes, former mayor of LA, Antonio Villaraigosa. And he leaned over to me and he said, as he was the first in modern history Latino mayor of this major city. And he said, "I couldn't have been mayor of Los Angeles had it not been for the civil rights movement. It's because of the civil rights movement that I had the right to run for mayor. You can't divorce the two." And he said, "I never want people to forget that." Think about it. So it is important. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, County Executive Sharon Baker. Really appreciate those remarks. And I always like to listen to what I'm hearing the speakers say to see if there's any other thoughts, bring thoughts to your mind. And I will mention another movie I think that is, a must-see if you haven't, is The Butler. I've seen it about 3 times now, and every time I see it, something else sinks in. But it's a true story, and it also reflects the break that came between us as the Negro who was working in order to be dignified and be respected and to actually do what was expected of him. And then the son who said that's really not enough, and fighting as a freedom fighter in that movie and showing how it broke a family. And that's how we need to look at our history and realize we can never, ever let that break us down. Some need to work in a straight line, like it says, it's order, and then some of us have to fight for something else. But neither is worse than the other. So respect each other and always be there for each other, no matter which way that goes. But definitely go see that movie. It's a wonderful movie. So moving forward, I would like to bring up Teresa Epps, who is the daughter of our council member Epps, and she's going to do a spoken word.
They come home to take care of children when I got through. Wash, iron, scrub, walk the dog, it was too much, really broke me down. I said, "Madam, can it be? You're trying to make me a pack of horse out of me." She opened her mouth, she said, "Oh no, you know, brother, I love you so." I said, "Madam, that may be true, but I'll be a dog if I love you." Lacing views, everyone. Before I do one poem, my mom told me to do two, so I did one for Lacing views. Today's his birthday, so I decided to do one. I would like to say that me growing up and me seeing everything that's happening now, you adults are our last generation of facts and information of our history. Because what we're going on now, we're being taught by the news, we're being taught by the media, we're being taught by our iPhones or whatever phone you do. Our history is being depleted right now. It's gone. And it's up to us, my generation, to come up and speak about it. But it also takes the adults, our mothers, our fathers, our grandmothers still, plan ahead and make sure that we pass it down and we keep passing down. Because, now they're writing books, and history books, without the information. I think like years ago, they said they didn't even have black history information in Texas books, Texas education books. So, we have to keep the movement going. That's it. Call this phone, wake up. And we pump out this sucks, shout out black power that echoes through dark hallways of a lost history. And at the end of this long journey is a closed vault, and only access is if you can read. A home says a homeland that bleeds, lost prophets of our beautiful deaf kings and stolen beautiful queens, and lost dreams and stories of Snow Whites and Cinderellas like life manuscripts handed down to ourselves, suicidal princes and princesses. Kill yourself now, little boy, little gal, but this is who you will never be. They're the tongue of our slave chants to the projects of our concrete jungles. Mass media praise our pickaninnies and syrup bottles as long as you give thanks. Yes, Master, I was grateful to hate myself. Families are divided, youth is numb, history is dying, mama stopped crying, afros and being down is just for fun. Halt, said the hum man. Did you not read? Our history has been shut down because we all have to come together to find the key. Peace and blessings, everybody.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. We have to do this a lot more often because we need to hear from our young people. And we need to heed those words. There's so much that's not being taught. With schools, pretty much in the same places. When I was here, when I first went to high school, there was no African American studies in American history. You would have thought, they just like slipped a little something in there and whatever, and unfortunately it's still that way. So thank you for reminding us, Teresa, that we really do have to step it up and really talk and teach and prepare our children. So before we move forward to our next speaker, we are ready to have a nice praise dancers.
Lord, I try so hard to be the best that I could be. It's like every time I take one step, something's right in front of me. Lord, where would I be without your grace and mercy? Oh, now I have one question, Lord, why? You changed my whole life. Oh, you made my wrongs right, and for the rest of my life, I'll never know why. You made something out of nothing. Oh, nothing. You made something out of nothing. You spoke and I was so. Why, I'll never know. My life was headed out of control. Somehow I shifted into overload. But then you came and did a work in me. Out of everything I once was, somehow you saw a masterpiece. You changed my whole life. Oh, you made my roads right, Lord. I never know why. Oh God, I wanna know. Thank you, Lord. Something out of nothing. With my head held high and my hands lifted in the air, I give you all the praise. You're the only one that could have led me out of this maze. And what you saw in me, I don't know. But Lord, I'm glad that you saw it. And every piece of me that was a mystery. Oh, Lord, you saw. for the rest of my life. I'll never know why you be something I did. Oh, nothing. You made something out of nothing.
Thank you so much, praise dancer. Do we have a praise dancer's name? The praise dancer's name. I'd love to just announce your name. Before we move on to the next item, I do want to make sure everybody knows that there's food in the back, so when we're done here, you get some food. Make sure you visit all of the rooms. Renee. Okay, let's praise Renee again. There's also a board over here called Who Am I? And you can win a prize. You have a list with the names and the pictures of young people, and you can list out who you believe that person is. And the prize is a book by Congressman John Lewis, who was a Freedom Rider. That's your prize. He sent the book to us because he could not attend today. So please take care to go into that. I also want to announce that Bladensburg is going to be having their African American Month celebration on February the 14th. What time is it? From 1 to 3. That'll be at the Bladensburg Town Hall. Oh, it's going to be at the Public Playhouse. Wonderful. And it's free to the public, so please come out to that event. And is Mayor James going to do poetry? Absolutely. So if you guys have never heard Mayor James do a piece of poetry, you have got to be there. He is awesome. So moving on, thank you. Moving on, the next place I want to go to, we're going to hear from Patrick Graves again, and he is going to sing our national Negro anthem. Right? So now I would like to introduce to you a very, very good friend of mine and someone who also has raised 5 children as I have in this wonderful county and has seen the different challenges through growing up as well as what it takes to be a woman here in the county. And that would be our former delegate, Jolene Ivy.
I know it's just me between you and the Super Bowl, so this will not be long. Although, you know, hearing some of the other speakers talk about how we didn't have Black history taught in school, I went to DC public schools, and we did. Yep. In fact, it was just that whole Afrocentric education that we talk about now. It didn't have a term back then. I didn't actually realize that white people had ever done anything before. I mean, I'm serious. I was stunned to learn that Babe Ruth was white because I knew that they had named a candy bar after him, so clearly he was black. So I was completely shocked. I mean, that's just the way we were taught. It never occurred to me that there was anything else. So I guess there was one benefit to going to DC public schools, right? And then we came out here to the county. We moved here when I was in, I guess, 10th grade and went to High Point High School. And my dad was a Buffalo Soldier. He's the one who raised me. And I've been asked to speak a little bit about the Buffalo Soldiers. So the Buffalo Soldiers in World War II They were the only regiment that was able to fight, that was African American. All the other black soldiers were relegated to, they could only drive trucks or they could only cook or something like that. But it just got to be a point in World War II that they were just losing too many white soldiers, to tell you the truth. And Eisenhower said, well, I guess we can let some of y'all fight. And that's how it happened. So Eisenhower allowed the Buffalo soldiers to start fighting, and they came to Italy. And there were 15,000 Buffalo soldiers in World War II. And my dad was one of them. And when he was there, you know, the Europeans actually treated him better than the white people back here in the United States. And then when they all came back home, all those black soldiers who'd been fighting for freedom for people in Europe, they were like, really? We're going to come back here and you're going to make me use the back door? And everybody else gets to come in the front. And this was true even during the war, when some of them would come back for periods of time, and they would see German prisoners of war being seated in a restaurant, being waited on by the waitresses, but they couldn't come in that front door. They couldn't sit in that restaurant. They had to go to the back door. And it's just ridiculous. It's so outrageous you can't even believe what I'm telling you, some of the kids, but it is in fact a true story. So Truman did end segregation in the military in 1948, but as we all know, for decades to come, there is still segregation in the United States. So there's a book actually written by James McBride called Miracle at St. Anna that talked about, it was a fictitious account of some of these things that happened, and it was based in Italy. It would follow the Buffalo soldiers. And when he wrote the book, he interviewed my dad and some of his friends. And then when Spike Lee decided to make a movie about that, based with the same name, my dad got to meet Spike Lee. Actually, I got to meet Spike Lee, but he was a lot nicer to my father than he was to me. I can't say I'm a big Spike Lee fan anymore. But he was super nice to the men, and that's the important thing, right? But I liked the movie. It didn't make a lot of money, but I thought that it was very cool. And at the end of the Blu-ray version, Spike Lee actually did an interview. He brought my dad and maybe about 6 or 7 other Buffalo soldiers to Harlem and interviewed them and put that video at the end of the Blu-ray version. So that's when I got to meet him. I had to escort my dad because, you know, he was too old to go by himself. We actually stayed in a super nice hotel too. I'll never stay in a hotel that nice again. So I guess I did get some benefit from it. But in any event, when the soldiers came back from the war, and they continued to build our country. They continued to be teachers and doctors and lawyers and business owners and cooks and everything that it takes to build this country, but they were still fighting for their own freedom here after they had freed the people in Europe. So he actually was fighting in Italy to help them, and then came back to a big problem here. So it's just an issue that it's not all better, but it's greatly improved. The Buffalo Soldiers have a slogan. It's called Deeds, Not Words. And I believe that those men really embodied that through the years that they fought. And then when they came back, it was still deeds that they did, and they really did everything to build this country. And I hope that we all, not just the Buffalo Soldiers, but the generations before us who did so much to make this country what it is, that we always keep them in mind and appreciate them. So thank you so much.
I make trouble here. She said, go Seahawks. I don't know who else is out there and what you want to do. But that is so important that we consistently remember. A lot of these people with complete dignity and pride stood up and continued to do what they did because they wanted to make good deeds, even though they might get spat in the face or they may get pushed away, but they did it. And that's how we are getting to where we're getting to today. And I do want to make a comment. I didn't know that you grew up in D.C. Well, I did too, and it was the same. You know, in D.C., I came to D.C. when I was in the 10th grade. I came to Prince George's, and I didn't really know discrimination. And of course, I knew a lot about the civil history because of the lifestyle I was growing up in. It was so different when I got into this county. It was just like, wow. I didn't even know all this was going on. So it is wonderful that we have moved so far forward in what we have, and we just have so much more to do. So, coming close to the end, I believe David Harrington hasn't come in, so if he does, we'll let him jump in and say something very quick. But what we're going to do right now is to bring up, now is everybody going to Zumba, or are we going to get a demonstration? We're going to have a Zumba demonstration. We do have Zumba here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. So you can come up, it's what, $5, $6 to come.
$5 grant.
All right, so this is our Zumba coordinator, so please come on up, and this is Sharon Malone, and give us your demonstration.
Tonight
Starting our cooking classes soon. We put in a grant for a second garden along with Evanston and Cottage City. So here in the Port Town, which is a low to moderate community, we are doing it to show that we can be healthy, well, and environmental students. So applaud that. So at this point, it's time to let people go get something to eat and, get ready for the Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff. And so the only thing I want to say, again, thank you so much for coming out. I thank you for looking at what's here. We're going to leave some of this material up for a while, I think for a month. Yeah. So that if you want to come back or bring somebody by to visit to see some of this material, I certainly hope that you do. And the way that in most of my meetings now, and I try to remember to do it on a regular basis, is to ask you what you're thankful for. Now, I'm not going to ask everybody to openly come up because I will do that usually, but at the time of the day, what I'm going to ask you to do is take a moment of silence and think about what you're absolutely grateful for, whether it is the history that's brought us here today, or the changes that have been made, or something in your personal life, your children, or your parents, or a promotion you got. But take a second. We're going to have a moment of silence. What are you thankful for? Okay, thank you so much, and I wish you all enjoy yourself. And thank you, Councilmember Ab. So thank you everybody for putting this together. This has been absolutely wonderful.